At Gottlieb Show is the Twitter handle. Let's get right after it. Stop me if you heard this before, but Duke gets all the calls. Right? This is a little bit like collusion in the NFL. Did anyone want to sign Colin Kaepernick? No, but that didn't mean that they had to get together and decide we're not going to sign Colin Kaepernick in the NFL. You understand? Does that mean that somehow there's this collusion to make sure Duke gets to the Sweet 16? Some conspiracy theory? No, but even if they're deserving of it, you know, they had 5 losses and they get a number 1 seed. And, oh, yeah, by the way, here's Duke with, let me kind of give you the succession of blown calls that help Duke. Zion Williamson runs over the defender. Now, while by my estimation, that is not a charge, I don't believe he extended his arm before the spin move. I had tweeted out similar plays from this weekend in college basketball that were called chargers in spite of the fact there was no arm extension, whether it was an assumption or whether that is called a charge 7, 8 times in 10. Then Zion Williamson drives in and Taco Fall. How great is the name Taco Fall? I mean, just Taco Fall. You're like, really? That's really Taco Fall? Amazing. Anyway, Taco Fall stands there like a big redwood, which this is a big point of emphasis in basketball. If a guy is vertical, you're allowed to drop your arms a little bit. You get verticality all the way until infinity. He didn't violate. He wasn't trying to take a charge. He was just standing up like a big, tall tree. That 7 times, 8 times in 10, not called a foul. It was against Central Florida. But then there's more. Then, and let's not bury the lead, Zion Williamson, as great as he is, choked the free throw. Andre Barrett pushes in the back of the defender. That 7, 8 times in 10 called a foul. And then if you look at the other side, I think it was Delorier, he does what's called a hook and hold, which, speaking of Purdue, Matt Painter's going to join us. That's what hurt Ethan Happ's elbow. He couldn't play last year in the Sweet 16 and Elite 8. So that's actually a flagrant foul. And then, so what am I? 1, 2, 3, 4. Where you got rare odds, bad odds, on all 4 of those things not being called against Duke. Then Central Florida gets the basketball, and Duke is very physical, as they always are, and his teams always are. Could have been called a foul on both shots. Central Florida got. They didn't make any. Duke survives. Duke advances. Now, do I think they got the officials together and said, hey, we got to make sure the Blue Devils advance? No. No, I don't. I don't think there's some grand conspiracy theory. But I do think that if you watch the sport enough, you watch the last time Duke won a national championship, they're playing Wisconsin. Mike Krzyzewski complains about the officiating at halftime, and suddenly they get every call in the second half. It just happens to work out that way. It becomes one of those, I don't need to watch the movie, I know how the story ends type deal. It's too bad, too, because it was a great game. And Duke did survive and did make big plays. And I do believe they fouled a couple times there late. And they should have been called. And with the whole idea of we don't want the refs to decide the outcome of the game, in this particular case, I think they did by not making calls. The biggest issue with it is college basketball's officials have tried to convince us for years, and it's that one, points of emphasis are always points of emphasis. Hook and hold, running guys over in offensive fouls, freedom of movement, et cetera, et cetera. And 2, that the game is officiated at the end of the game the same way it's officiated at the start of the game, and the Sweet 16 or the second round, or if it's Duke, or if it's Central Florida, or if it's Liberty, those calls are the same. That's not what happened there. And so even though I have Duke in the championship game, and even though I, like everybody else, want to see Zion Williamson continue to compete, and he competes at a magical level, he's an amazing player. I don't think what happened at the end of that game was right, considering what we've been told and what we've seen throughout all the other college basketball games in the exact same tournament. You know? So I don't think I don't think there was any sort of collusion to keep Colin Kaepernick out of the league. I think there's enough teams going like, either we have a quarterback or it's just too much and he's not that good to put all our equity on the line. Like, not worth it to us. We can all come to the same conclusion without there being collusion. And we can all come to the same conclusion about Duke getting some calls down the stretch in a couple of huge moments at the end of the game without it being predetermined that Duke's going to get those calls. It's still not sitting right with you. Very chalky Sweet 16, which to me, like, look, here's the smart way. The easy way to look at it is, well, the committee got it right. So does that mean when there's upsets previously, the committee got it wrong? I think the answer is no. I would only say this. There were some blowouts over the weekend, not close games. Obviously, the Duke game was the exception, probably the best game, one of the 2 or 3 best games of the weekend. But that Tennessee-Iowa was great. Iowa come back from down 25 to send that game to overtime. But I think one of the reasons it's easier to determine who are the best teams in college basketball as opposed to college football, and maybe even the NBA and Major League Baseball, any playoff system, is because they all play each other. It's like Gonzaga has played Duke and Tennessee and Carolina. If you watch those games, they're all about equally talented. Duke has played Carolina and Virginia and Gonzaga. So we've seen what they look like healthy, what they look like when they're not healthy. So it's easier to determine, I've seen them actually both play, and I've seen them evolve. I know who's a little bit better, who's improving, etc., because I've seen them. Whereas college football can be very difficult.